There's one more thing from Mitt Romney's history as a public figure that I think is being lost in the current discussions about him not releasing his tax returns, and it is this. In his 1994 Senate race against Democratic Senator Ted Kennedy, Mitt Romney demanded that Ted Kennedy release his tax returns. Quote, with the tax filing deadline looming, Republican Senate candidate Mitt Romney yesterday challenged Senator Edward M. Kennedy to disclose his state and federal taxes to prove he has, quote, nothing to hide. It's time the biggest taxing senator in Washington shows the people of Massachusetts how much he pays in taxes, said Romney. Now, does this mean that Mitt Romney disclosed his tax returns at the same time, that same year? Surely he wouldn't demand the other guy release his tax returns without releasing his own. Yeah, of course he would. Quote, Romney said he would disclose his own state and federal taxes for the last 3 years on the very day that Kennedy turns over his taxes for public scrutiny. So that was the gig, right? I will release my tax returns, but only when my opponent releases his. Mitt Romney lost to Ted Kennedy in that Senate race. Mr. Romney's opponent, the senator, never released his tax returns, and so neither did Mitt Romney. But when Mr. Romney ran for office the next time, in 2002, when he ran for Massachusetts governor, his opponent in that race did release her tax returns. In fact, all of the Democrats vying to run against him released their tax returns even before they had picked their Democratic nominee. Robert Reich and the state Senate president and Shannon O'Brien, the eventual nominee, they all released multiple years of their tax returns. And remember, in 94, Mr. Romney said, if my opponent releases tax returns, I will too, that very day. But in 2002, when his opponent released tax returns, Mr. Romney wouldn't do it. He wouldn't release his. What changed? He was asked about that change in a debate that year.
You have refused to release your income tax forms, even though others, including Governor William Weld, U.S. Senator John Kerry, and your opponent Shannon O'Brien, have released theirs. Do you have something to hide?
I believe very deeply in my personal privacy, what little amount there's left. and in this case, you made a couple of exceptions from your list. Senator Kennedy, when I was running against him, boy, I told him, you've got to release those income tax returns of yours. And he said, no, I value my privacy. And I think he was right, and I was wrong. As a result, I do share his view on this. I'm not going to release my income tax returns. And Shannon O'Brien's husband, with whom I presume they share expenses, likewise hasn't released his income taxes.
He's not releasing his tax returns. He was wrong to ever demand that his opponent, Senator Kennedy, should release his tax returns. But now that his new opponent, Shannon O'Brien, has released her tax returns, well, now how come we're not seeing her husband's, too? It's weird, right? It was a weird spot for Mr. Romney to be caught in. It was a 180-degree about-face on this same issue that's dogging him now in his run for the presidency. And in 2002, the Boston press did not go easy on him. They did not go easy on him the last time he made a hash of this issue during that run for governor. From the Boston Globe, quote, Romney had made an issue of tax disclosure when he ran against U.S. Senator Edward Kennedy in 1994, criticizing Kennedy for having never released his returns. Romney's spokesman said yesterday there was no inconsistency in this action. The offer still stands on Ted. Romney's spokesman Eric Fernstrom said, we've been waiting. This is 2002. This is 8 years after Romney ran against Ted Kennedy in a totally unrelated race in which Mitt Romney was refusing to release his tax returns. But he said he would release them if Senator Kennedy did, too. They said the same thing to the Boston Herald as well. Asked about the 1994 Kennedy campaign, Eric Fernstrom said Romney will still release his returns if Senator Kennedy does. Quote, we've been waiting 8 years and the offer still stands, Fernstrom said. 8 years after that Senate race, that was the only condition under which Mitt Romney would release his tax returns? His opponent releasing her tax returns wasn't enough. All his Democratic opponents releasing their tax returns wasn't enough. Getting caught lying about his tax returns in relation to his Massachusetts residency wasn't enough. But 8 years after he ran against Ted Kennedy for Senate, when he was running in a totally different race in which Ted Kennedy was totally irrelevant, a release of Ted Kennedy's tax returns would be the trigger for Mitt Romney to release his returns? Why? And if that offer still stood 8 years after that election, when Ted Kennedy was totally irrelevant to the race he was in, does that mean the offer still stands now? We asked the Romney campaign today if the offer still stands. So far, we have had no on-the-record response, but I really hope we will.